Udebir Sarandas. He's the Assistant Director and Advisor of Monetary and Capital Markets Department at the International Monetary Fund, that's the IMF. And Syed Akbaruddin, former permanent representative of India to the UN, and now, of course, the Dean of the Kautilya School of Public Policy. So if we can just get going with health questions. Multilateral organizations, are they, in today's language, which I'm sure a lot of students will recognize, are they a multiverse of madness? Or is there some sort of method to what they do, the chaos, the different inputs? Mr. Das, why don't we start with you?
Oh boy. Thank you very much, Monica, and Dean, and apologies again, and good to have the students listening in. So listen, I will obviously not subscribe to that point of view. Let me put it out right now, and I'll not examples as to why that perception is so misplaced. Right now, there are about between 50 to 60 countries in the membership of the UN. The IMF has 197 members. I think UN has 187. I think UN has a couple more. All UN members are not the IMF members. So 50 to 60 countries and conflict states. These are countries who have no resources, no capacity, no wherewithal, no money. And guess who's sort of keeping them propped up and working with an engagement across a lot of partners? It is the multilateral framework within which these countries are being sort of supported so that they can grow, they can come out of fragility. Now, that's a very good example of how the multilateral framework really comes and takes care of global membership. We then saw in the case of COVID, right? COVID was another example where you found so much of international institutions who came together, apart from countries also. So that was a very good combination of national level and multilateral partnership. But without multilateral partnership, I don't think that any one country, even the United States. The third and the final thing, I don't know how many of you will remember, in 2008, we had a very big global financial crisis. It was, but that is again where the multilateral institutions came in to help out. So my point, and of course in the neighborhood, you know what's going on in Sri Lanka, that's again, ultimately the last resort has been to come to get some support from the IMF or the international community. So the World Bank is also there. So I don't know whether that answers the question, but I am sort of a strong believer that criticisms will all, and you know, people are allowed to have views, but I think the reality is somewhat what I'm saying.
Right. Mr. Akbaruddin, you were at the UN, you represented India at the UN, and there has been criticism of the UN of late and for some time now that it really is a place, just, it's a name, right? They aren't doing a lot, and what are they're really for? Could you explain to all the participants here that at the core of it, what organization that the UN actually manages to achieve?
Thank you, Monica. Mr. Udebir Sarandas, you stand. So you need to look at United Nations or not as against what is, and there is no alternative, but under pressure. It's not been a peace and security was the basis on which the UN was founded. Not as was and the Second World Wars. So the idea was to World War. Now you can, of course, experiment a conflagration during the beginning. Also need to acknowledge is by definition and by design, the UN is not fit for purpose in terms of addressing conflicts between global powers. By design, not by just by chance we realized it or something. The fear was that if powers conflict and you push one into a, then the configuration could go the last century. And therefore, by design, the UN was, it comes to a stand when there is a conflict situation between two global powers. And that's what we are seeing now. So it's pretty clear that, but it's moved in other areas. Nobody thought when the UN or as a big issue, climate change as a goal, humanitarian assistance in large numbers in conflict-ridden areas. All of us look at the conflict in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia, and that's catching the headlines. But there are conflicts none of us is even focused on. Look at Yemen. The body that is able to do something to piece together, not in full measure, but piece together some sort of an accommodation. I could replicate. If it's, I just use Yemen as a metaphor because perhaps the nearest all linkages between India and Yemen of a historical, go down to South Sudan, go down to Congo, you could go down to Haiti. And now this is in Europe too. So which is the agency which is handling, again, it's a UN agency. Point I'd like to make is, yes, there have been stress system. It's not work full measure in certain parts and certain security. It's not. Still plays a role, which if it wasn't there, we would have to invent it or something very akin to it. So it's not the best solution. It's the solution that is available, and that's the best tool to work with in the current.
But, you know, well, the Western countries that actually fund multilateral organizations actually get their, you know, it's money talks, right? So funding it are actually pushing these multilateral organizations to behave the way. Mr. Das, is it that at the end of the day, these organizations work without any sort of links or lineages? How do they work?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Preface it by saying that, yes, it is countries are not equal. All, you know, at different development, different stages of evolution. For example, these 50 I mentioned, they're way, way behind. So obviously somebody else has to come in and their voice, because there's money on the table, probably have a bigger voice in that. 25 years here, and unless there is a important other consideration than economic, I have not seen any decision taken without consensus. So I think that consensus approach is something countries who are members of the multilateral framework, they hold it very dearly and they carry it on in a sensible way. Now, I'm not saying that what the question you asked is wrong. There have been instances, cases, every case to see really which country of countries or what was the alignment of interests across a group of countries that probably led to an outcome where people started questioning the governance of that decision. all from the IMF, making it transparent. I mean, these are right. I mean, there is no sort of, you're collectively accountable to a large membership. And way to look at it. Now, absolutely no doubt. I mean, when after the World War, the multilateral framework institutions came about, it was largely for construction and largely which had resources and had played a very big role in the World War II to bring it to a closure. But then later the G7, G3, the G7, now of course. So I think the collective voice of at least 80 countries across a lot of issues have become much more prominent. As I just wanted to say one more thing. Excellent is observations. I think that students is